I think we're live. Well, pre-recorded. 9/30/2021. The Indiana Constitution, Article 12, Militia. Take one. I hope this is the last and only take. Good evening, Hoosiers. How are you feeling tonight? Confused? Used? Abused? Every day there seems to be another push from the globalists and collectivists in both political parties to tighten the grip of tyranny. Speaking of which, I saw two stories in the last couple of weeks where the governors of some blue states have called up their state National Guards in order to, one, drive school buses to ensure that your children are able to attend government indoctrination centers, aka public schools, because the regular bus drivers have either quit, been fired, or are ill. And two, to supplement hospital staffs for the same reasons. These actions, Hoosiers, constitute a very, very slippery slope. Just checking to make sure we're recording. You must recall that our founders had an extreme distrust of standing armies and consolidation of power. Now you can see why. It does not take much of an imagination to envision the progression from merely driving our children to school to commandeering them by the force of the government sword to attend government schools, and even perhaps to have forced uniforms, medications forced, and perhaps even medical procedures forced on them, all without the consent of the parents. And with the military government usurpation of hospital and medical sector control, the road to serfdom is open and without limits. And this, Hoosiers, is only the beginning of the new world order they have in store for you. But Hoosiers, do not despair. There is a way out of this mess. Our God-given natural rights and liberties can be secured. There is a solution. The Constitution solution. Wouldn't you know it? Well, hello. I'm Dr. Chris McGarrah of Warsaw, Indiana, with yet another episode of The Constitution Solution. In order to better man Firewall, Indiana, and to rescue our sovereign state from tyranny, I have been presenting a discussion of the Indiana Constitution. Education and knowledge are the foundations of liberty. We only have seven months remaining to save Indiana. Tonight, the topic of discussion, appropriately enough, is Article 12, Militia. If there is time, I would like to explore Article 13, Indebtedness. And Article 14, Boundaries. The Indiana Constitution has only 16 articles and one small schedule. So we're almost at the end. Please hang in there. As you recall, Indiana has had two constitutions, the first in 1816 and the second in 1851. The 1851 text, with numerous amendments and repeals, is the basis for the current Indiana Constitution. For most of the recitation, I have been using the 2010 version Constitution of the State of Indiana, annotated by political commentator Andy Horning. That's Horning. And he is, interestingly enough, from Freedom, Indiana. Yes, there is a Freedom, Indiana. You can easily locate his annotated Constitution online. And he goes through the Indiana Constitution line by line and makes some very thought-provoking comments. Okay, Hoosiers, here we go. In the 1816 Constitution, there were two references to the militia. Section 7 of Article 4, the executive, and Article 7, militia. Several interesting features were that there was always a conscientious objector provision. Always. Conscientious objector provision. It was a general militia of free, able-bodied males. The governor was commander-in-chief, and interestingly enough, in the 1816 document, it was specified that the troops elected their officers, and with few exceptions, the officers then elected higher officers and the generals. The Constitution of 1851 had a 6-section Article 12, militia. What is interesting and disturbing is that the amendments and repeals were all in 1974, with the exception of the revision of the militia qualifier of, and here I quote, all able-bodied white male persons between the ages of 18 and 45, end quote. And this was changed to, quote, all persons over the age of 17 in 1936, and then refined in 1974. Okay, let's begin the recitation of the current Indiana Constitution, Article 12, militia. You will also note that Article 12 adds 2 more powers to the governor for a total of 19 constitutional powers allowed so far. Here we go. Article 12, Militia. Section 1. A militia shall be provided and shall consist of all persons over the age of 17 years, except those persons who may be exempted by the laws of the United States or of this state. The militia may be divided into active and inactive classes and consist of such military organizations as may be provided by law. That's how we get to the National Guard. Now, Andy Horning makes the following comment. This says militia and not standing army, in the parlance of our predecessors, who wrote our constitutions, both state and federal. This is a key difference, but I won't take space here to explain why. You should look this up and see why our founders were so opposed to what we have become, particularly since 1903's unconstitutional, warned against, and disastrous Dick Act, the Dick Act. I will talk about that towards the end. And Andy goes on, and note that nobody joins this militia. You are it if you're over 17. That includes old guys like me, who typically just vote our kids into foreign battles and remain comfortably in our lazy boys. This mandates a Swiss-like military that's very, very unlikely to fight unless attacked. Would that be so bad? Andy says. Now let's get back to the actual Constitution. Section 2. The governor is commander-in-chief of the militia and other military forces of this state. And Andy comments, and other military forces of this state. This is the heart of political executive authority, but it's also the heart of federalism and the loss of proper order between state and truly federal power. Section 3. There shall be an adjutant general who shall be appointed by the governor. That's power number 19 of the governor, and the previous one, commander-in-chief, was power 18, enumerated to the governor. Section 4, conscientious objectors. No person conscientiously opposed to bearing arms shall be compelled to do so in the militia. I believe in the federal early realm, this came from the Quakers, because the Quakers were pacifists. And this is how this conscientious objector clause came about through our early history. Okay, Section 5 was repealed in 1974. Section 5 was where they specified the sedentary and active portions of the militia, and this became part of Section 1 that I just read. Section 6 was repealed in 1974. That was the conscientious objector clause. It wasn't actually repealed, but it replaced Section 4 which in 1851 was the organizational section. Andy Horning concludes, as you can see, this whole article has been amended many times and not so long ago. But the fact is, an Indiana militia, not the National Guard, still exists in law. I'm not so sure I agree with Andy, but we can explore this further. Well, that was Article 12, the militia. So what is the current status of the militia in 2021 Indiana? And where did the National Guard come into the mix? You'll notice that in that Constitution, it does not mention the word or words National Guard. As always, let's go back to the original text. Look at the last few words of Section 1 of Article 12, and I quote, active and inactive classes and consists of such military organizations as may be provided by law. As may be provided by law. The General Assembly. Okay, where's the law? Well, good that you should ask. Here it is. Indiana Code 10-16-1-22 through 10-16-19-2, the Indiana Military Code. You can find this online from various sources. Allow me to read the first 3 sections from Chapter 6, Organization and Personnel. So this was, as the Constitution specified, as shall be provided for by law. This is the law. Here we go. Age of personnel. Section 1. Under Article 12, Section 1 of the Constitution of the State of Indiana, the militia consists of all persons who are at least 18 years of age, except those persons who are exempted by the laws of the United States or of Indiana. The next section, Section 2, Classes of Militia. Pay attention, Hoosiers. The militia shall be divided into 2 classes, the Sedentary Militia and the National Guard, as follows. National Guard appears. The Sedentary Militia consists of all persons subject to bear arms under the Constitution of the State of Indiana who do not belong to the National Guard. Number 2, the National Guard consists of those able-bodied citizens between the proper ages as established by this article who may be enrolled, organized, and mustered into the service of the state as provided in this article. The organized militia of the state constitutes and shall be known as the Indiana National Guard. There's where the Guard comes in. Section 3, National Guard. The Indiana National Guard consists of those units, 1, specified by A, the Secretary of the Army, and B, the Secretary of the Air Force, and 2, approved by the governor. Now that's seeming to give the governor another power, but it's not in the Constitution, so we're not going to really count it because you can't delegate a power away from the legislature. Okay. B. The composition of authorized units shall be the same as those prescribed for the regular Army and regular Air Force. The forces of the Indiana National Guard shall be fully armed, uniformed, organized, and equipped in accordance with the provisions of the National Military Establishment Regulations governing the regular Army and regular Air Force. Let's just go on to Section 4. A. Officers shall be commissioned by the governor. The governor is ex officio commander-in-chief. A commission may not be issued to any officer of the Indiana National Guard except to general officers until the officer has passed a satisfactory examination before a board demonstrating, government language. Okay, so that is the law as specified by the Constitution. So the General Assembly has done its job constitutionally to specify these items. Article 16, Indiana Code. Okay. Okay. But that still does not answer the question about how the National Guard came about and whether or not it represents a usurpation of the state militia guard. I found a very concise 2.5-page summary online called The Root Reforms and the National Guard. The Root Reforms and the National Guard by William N. Donnelly, 2001. Basically, when you look into this, let me get out the Root Reforms. Basically, when our country began, or our union began, let me qualify that better, our union began, there was the Federal Militia Act of 1792, then moved to 1898. So that act stood for all that time. Then there was Secretary of War Elihu Root. Gotta love those names. Elihu Root. Mr. Root, or Secretary Root, came to the conclusion that the state militias were an ineffective backup or addition to the regular army. Now, I apologize to all you military history buffs for that gross oversimplification, but time here is limited. This concern by Secretary Root led to the Militia Act of 1903 and its 1908 amendment. This law is also known as the Dick Act, after Congressman Charles Dick of Ohio, who was a longtime Ohio National Guard officer. Important in the 1908 amendment was the deletion of the 9-month limit on federal service and the deletion of the ban on Guard units serving outside the United States. Important. Since 1908, there have been a number of congressional acts which have had the effect of consolidating the control of the Guard into the federal sphere. Hoosiers, you will remember that our founders feared consolidation of power by the federal government, and the current state of the Indiana National Guard is a prime example of this warning. The situation is such that many states have initiated the idea of Protect the Guard Acts to prohibit the deployment of state guard units overseas unless there is a constitutional declaration of war passed by the Congress. I refer you to the 10th Amendment Center and their State of the Nullification Movement document, which does give some examples of the Protect the Guard type of legislation being proposed in a number of states. Well, allow me to quickly go over Articles 13 and 14, Indebtedness and Boundaries. These will be quick. I just want to get through them so we wrap this thing up. Okay, let me find my Constitution here. Article 13. Excuse me. Section 1. A bit redundant since it only has Section 1. Here we go. Going to turn it up on the high. No political or municipal corporation in this state shall ever become indebted in any manner for any purpose to an amount in the aggregate exceeding 2% on the value of the taxable property within such corporation to be ascertained by the last assessment for state and county taxes previous to the incurring of such indebtedness, and all bonds or obligations in excess of such amount given by such corporations shall be void, provided that in time of war, foreign invasion, or other great public calamity. Is a pandemic a great public calamity? I add that question. Or other great public calamity, on petition of a majority of the property owners in number and value, within the limits of such corporation, the public authorities in their discretion may incur obligation necessary for the public protection and defense to such amount as may be requested and such petition. This was added in 1881. Andy Horning comments, "This would be a joke if it weren't so sad. The phrase, quote, to an amount in the aggregate, end quote, apparently has no meaning to the increasing number of bureaucracies, each of whom believe they're entitled to encumber taxpayers with their own 2% debt load. Well, such obligations are void by law." Now let's go to Article 14, Boundaries. This is a real stimulating one, but I want to get through it because then that only leaves us with 15, 16, and the schedule at the end. We'll do that in 2 weeks. Article 14, Boundaries. Are you ready, Hoosiers? Take notes. Boundaries of state established in Section 1. In order that the boundaries of the state may be known and established, it is hereby ordained and declared that the state of Indiana is bounded on the east by the meridian line, which forms the western boundary of the state of Ohio, on the south by the Ohio River, from the mouth of the Great Miami River to the mouth of the Wabash River. On the west, by a line drawn along the middle of the Wabash River from its mouth to a point where a due north line drawn from the town of Vincennes would last touch the northwestern shore of said Wabash River, and thence by a due north line until the same shall intersect an east-west line drawn to a point 10 miles north of the southern extreme of Lake Michigan, on the north by said east-west line until the same shall intersect the first-mentioned meridian line, which forms the western boundary of the state of Ohio. Section 2. The state of Indiana shall possess jurisdiction and sovereignty coextensive with the boundaries declared in the preceding section, and shall have concurrent jurisdiction in civil and criminal cases with the state of Kentucky on the Ohio River and with the state of Illinois on the Wabash River, so far as said rivers form the common boundary between this state and said states respectively. End of section 14. Well, Hoosiers, that brings us to the end of another episode of The Constitution Solution. In the next episode, I hope to conclude the discussion of the Indiana Constitution. See you on or about October 14th on Facebook and YouTube. Remember, my internet is so suboptimal that these episodes must be pre-recorded and downloaded. And to download a high-def recording takes overnight. Someday we'll have modern technology. In the meantime, Hoosiers, and this is the part you've all been waiting for, remember, doctor's orders. What are they? Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. But above all, Hoosiers, keep your distance. Keep your distance from those socialist, statist, globalist, collectivist politicians and bureaucrats. Because now, Hoosiers, you know exactly who they are. The curtain has been pulled back, and they can no longer hide. Hoosiers, we only have 7 months. 7 months left to save Indiana. The redistricting will be completed soon. Then we must inject the Indianapolis swamp with scores of candidates who will secure our God-given natural rights and liberties. We can do it. Above all, we must do it. Now more than ever, the state of Indiana, the great sovereign state of Indiana, and these United States of America need the Constitution solution. As they say at the conclusion of every episode of JBS Constitution Corner show, don't just know your Constitution, live it. Live it every day. Good night, and see you in 2 weeks. More or less, pending the internet. Thank you. 7 months. You got to do it. Get off of that keyboard. We need to take action. Candidates, replace the swamp. Thank you.